All right, welcome to CASP Test Prep Mission to Success. This is week one, where we'll go through kind of a brief introduction to CASP, what to expect, and give you some tips on how to get through it. So here's our agenda for today. Excuse me, we'll go over our mission and vision, our compass values. We'll talk a little bit about what is CASP and who takes it. Some mission planning, lots of information for you to sort of be prepared for what's coming, although we will go into more detail about many of these things in our later sessions, but we'll give you the overview today. And then some training before launch, as well as testing tips. So this is our mission and vision for Compass. Our mission statement is to inspire and develop innovative, creative, self-directed learners, one scholar at a time. And our vision is to create a collaborative virtual learning community, inspiring scholars to appreciate the ways in which arts and sciences nurture curiosity for lifelong learning and prepare scholars to take responsibility for their future success. And these are our values here. We follow what's called the Arctic values of achievement, respect, teamwork, integrity, and communication. Okay, so a little bit about CASP, which includes SBAC, CAST, PFT. It's sort of a family of tests. The SBAC is a nationwide standards assessment, but it's part of our California testing here. So, excuse me, the spring testing window for CASP begins March 28th. And it will be remotely administered this year, which is great. So nobody has to make any travel plans. The only plans you'll need to make are to be home at your scheduled testing time with your Wi-Fi and computer working. The CASP stands for California State Summative Assessment, and it's made up of these three tests: the ELA, the math, and then the CAST, which is for a more select group. But we'll go over the grade levels and who takes what in just a few minutes. The PFT is the physical fitness test. And if you do need some help with what to expect for the PFT, there's a link here that you can visit, and it'll give you a bit more information about how to administer the test, who's responsible for what, and things like that. And you'll be able to access all of these links through the slide deck that we've provided for you. If the PFT is administered this year, and we haven't heard for 100% certainty whether or not that will happen. So if it is administered, it will be proctored by your ST, but it will be given at home. So you won't have to go anywhere to do that. You'll just work together with your ST to get that done. And as soon as we know for sure if the PFT needs to be administered this year, we'll get that information out to you as well.
Okay, thanks so much, Jen. And I just wanted to let everybody know I did put the slide deck link in the chat box for you to go ahead and open up. You can copy and paste that into your browser and just enjoy being able to click on all the links. Those are fully available to you. So we wanted to make sure all the resources on our slide deck were ready, and you could go back and just review everything. I also, just as Jen said, wanted to review what grade levels take the CASP and the CAST. So the CAST is taken for all students grades 3 to 8, and then also 11th grade. The CAST, which is the science test, is taken by grades 5, 8, and 11 if needed. So additionally, grade 12 scholars might take the CAST if they hadn't taken it their junior year. So just a heads up on that. So then in terms of testing specifics, you heard Jen say that the test is going to be remote. So what that actually means is that you will be signing in just like with STAR. So those of you that are newly enrolled or you've been enrolled for a while, you've taken the STAR with your teacher or your ST. And that STAR is the benchmark. You sign in with your teacher and you have your camera on and your microphone on, and you take the test where your teacher is actually monitoring you while you're testing. So CASP is very similar to that, except that you'll be signing in through a secure browser loaded onto your computer. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that in a bit. But something to note is that you'll need a working camera and a working microphone. So we wanted to talk a little bit about why testing is important. Testing helps us prepare you more specifically for your college and career goals. Specific to the school, and why it's extra important for the school is, even though you might have heard that you don't have to take the test, and even though it doesn't actually impact you regarding your grades or graduation, it does impact our school. So the state of California actually asks us, in order to maintain our funding, they actually ask us to have a 95% participation rate from our scholars. So when you take that CAS test, you're actually really helping our school stay an option for your family. It also helps the school counselors do appropriate course placement by using that as a piece of evidence. It's one of a lot of pieces of evidence, but using that as a piece of evidence to give the most personalized course placement for your scholar. And finally, it helps your teacher do the same thing in terms of using it as a piece of overall evidence to give your scholar a personalized education. So in online, that might be modifying or adding scaffolding. In options, it would be looking with you at specific curriculums or subscriptions, or a number of different options to help scaffold your scholar in areas of need or opportunity, or even just challenge them in areas where they've conquered already. So what testing is not, it has nothing to do with your scholar being moved to the next grade, which is what matriculation means. And then it has nothing to do with graduation. And it has no impact on passing or failing courses. So that's really important, because that is a source of testing anxiety, not just for the scholars, but sometimes for the parents. So really important to note that the testing has nothing to do with the advancement of your scholar or the grade, overall impact of grades on courses, GPA, nothing. But what it does do is help us work with you and your scholar in the most personalized way possible. So we already reviewed this in a couple of slides ago, but just again, just to review, grades 3 to 8 takes the CAS. Grade 11 also takes the CAS. And then grade 5, 8, and 11 will take the CAST, the science test, C-A-S-T. And sometimes grade 12 if they have not completed it during their 11th grade year. So a few important things that will help just relieve some of that testing anxiety, we're hoping, is that we want to ensure that you understand CASP is untimed. So there's not this pressure to get it done in a certain period of time, and that can actually be saved and continued as long as it's proctored with your teacher. So CAST assessments are untimed. You can take as much time as needed to complete each part of this assessment. They can be taken independently, meaning that parents and siblings cannot help. So that's going to be closely monitored, and that's part of that proctoring process. So when you're on camera with your teacher, it's going to be very important that you make sure you're by yourself. You don't have parents or siblings interacting with you during the test. They can help you, though, get logged in and just get started. So that's totally okay, because we realize tech issues are sometimes a thing. So that's not a problem. You just can't be helped with questions. So it can be frustrating sometimes. The scholar will see the teacher there, and the automatic inclination is to say, excuse me, I don't understand this question. But that's just unfortunately not something that the teacher or ST will be able to do during this specific test. You can't use your phone. You can't have any other devices going on. So if your teacher or ST, whoever's proctoring, sees you looking down a lot, just know that he or she will probably, if they see you looking away or looking down, will probably check in with you and just say, hey, we just need you to stay focused on the test. So that might be frustrating because you might not be actually looking at anything, but just know that's part of their job. And it's not because they suspect anything, it's just part of what they're tasked to do. So also scores from the CAS will come during the summer. So it's going to take a little while. Those scores again are only used for personalized education for you, nothing else. And finally, you can't really study for the CAS because it's actually measuring what you already know. So it's not something that you need to learn things for. It's just measuring what's already happening in your day-to-day education.
All right, so a little bit of mission planning. We're going to go over some of the basic rules, some navigation assistance that's available to you, as well as the pausing rules. So the first rule is you can't skip any questions on the assessment. So if you're not sure about something, there's a really handy little tool here that you'll see. This is part of your the testing platform. And we'll go into more details about where to find these tools. But it's important to know that we do have the option, or you have the option rather, to mark questions for review. So if you're not quite sure about what an answer might be, or if you want to give it more time, but your brain is kind of tired of working on that question, that's okay. You can mark it for review. And then before you submit the test at the end, you can go back and check on any of those review questions and just make sure that you have the answer that you're happiest with. Okay, you have to answer all the questions on a page before you can move on to the next question. So some pages have multiple questions. The performance task in particular, I think, has several questions on one page, but even on the regular computer test, there could be times when there's multiple questions on a page. And so you need to answer all those questions. So if you're not able to move ahead, or if you're not able to move to the next question, there might be something that you missed. So make sure you go through that page of questions, make sure that you made selections everywhere that a selection is required of you. So you can navigate to an available test page by clicking on the back or next buttons, or by selecting the page from the question drop down in the toolbar. So again, we'll go over this in more detail, but up at the top of your testing platform, you can see the questions there. And if you click the drop down, you'll be able to go and I think you can revisit questions that you have already answered, but you won't be able to move forward until you have answered each question in order, but you can always kind of go back to your answers. Excuse me. Okay. So if you need to take a break, a restroom break, a snack break, even just a brain break, it's completely okay, 100% okay. We just ask that you let your examiner know, and then there's an option to pause your assessment. And there's the button there, so you'll recognize that when you're in the session taking your test. You can click that pause button, and it'll give you some time to go and take care of whatever it is you need to take care of. So there's a couple rules for the pause, though, and really important to remember, although we'll review these with you in detail again later in one of these sessions, but also your proctor will review this with you as well. But if you pause for less than 20 minutes, you can go back and review any of your previously answered questions. All right, but if you pause for more than 20 minutes, then you won't be able to review any of your previous responses. So those questions will kind of be locked out to you. You won't be able to go back and see those and review anything. Even if you mark them for review, you won't be able to do that after the 20-minute mark. Okay, so make sure if you do need to take a break that you give yourself that time limit, make sure you're back within that 20 minutes. If you're idle for more than 20 minutes, which means you haven't paused your test, but you haven't answered any questions and you haven't navigated the page at all, if it's just idle, what will happen is that the testing system will pause automatically for you and then it will log you out, okay? So all your answers in progress will be saved, but when you do log back in, you're gonna go ahead and be presented with the first unanswered question, and you won't be able to go back and check in on those other ones, the previous questions. Okay, so just a few things to keep in mind for the pause rule. Like I said, you're most welcome to take a break anytime you need one, but let your proctor know and make sure that you kind of keep very conscious of that time frame. Okay, so a little more about mission planning. So embedded versus non-embedded. There are quite a few tools that are available to you. There's embedded tools and there's non-embedded tools. So embedded means that they're just a part of the assessment, and you'll be able to access those from your testing platform. The screen that you see in front of you, you'll be able to access several tools that are embedded into the program, into the system. There are also non-embedded tools, which means they're not a part of the assessment right there on your computer. It will be something like a printed piece of paper or breaks that you can take. Breaks are tools, right? We need to be able to sort of reset our minds and take care of ourselves. And so having those break options available are also tools that are there for you. So feel free to take advantage of those. Universal tools are the tools that are available for every scholar to use while they take the CASP. So no accommodations necessary, nothing specialized necessary. These are available for everybody who's taking the CASP. And we'll review these with you during our first live session on Friday, February 11th. We'll go over more of these universal tools that are available to you. Designated supports are going to be a little bit different than that. So those are additional supports, and those are going to be teacher assigned. And so your teacher may assign supports based on your benchmark data or any other data or things that your teacher may notice about you and your needs that they would like to assign you some additional support. They're not parent requested. These are strictly assigned from teachers based on their knowledge and available data. There are accommodations available for scholars with 504s and IEPs. So if you have an IEP or a 504, make sure that you have a conversation with your teacher and definitely your case manager so that you know what your accommodations should be during the CASP assessment. All right, so some test taking strategies. And these are pretty universal for all tests, but we think it's really important to go over them for CASP because this is kind of a big assessment, if you will. And so sometimes folks can get or maybe feel a little overwhelmed. So we want to go over some of these strategies with you so that you know that this is completely manageable and there's definitely lots you can do to make it less overwhelming. If you're more inclined to feel that way, there are some strategies you can use to minimize that effect. Okay. So practice test taking strategies at home. So some of these include, and these are all these links, like we said earlier, are available for you. Number one, to think critically about what the directions and questions are asking of you. Sometimes when we read things, especially when we read them quietly to ourselves, our brains have tendency to autocorrect to what we would like for it to say or what we think it's going to say. So it's important that you really read it carefully, think critically about what it's actually asking you to do, and make sure that you have a clear understanding of what the question is asking of you, okay? Also, carefully read every answer choice. There's usually 3 to 4 choices, maybe 3 to 5, depending on the question. And sometimes we like to see the first answer that we think is right and click it and move on before we've looked at the other answers. And sometimes we may not be making the best choice. So it's really important, especially for questions that are a little bit more interpretive, like a language arts question, a reading comprehension question, things like that. It's really important that you read all of the options and then make the best choice. Even though one might seem right, there might be one that's better. So do make sure you read through all of them. Use process of elimination. If there's one that's definitely not it, cross that out. We don't even want to consider it. So you can use that as well. In constructed responses or essay questions, use strong academic vocabulary. So kind of avoid those generalized terms like, gosh, I know we're going to talk about this in more detail as well, but really try to use your strongest academic vocabulary. Be precise with the words that you're choosing. Make sure you're using the most specific word for what you would like to convey. Be smart with charts and maps. Analyze all information before answering the question. kind of like carefully reading every choice and thinking critically about the question. Make sure that you're analyzing all information in the question as well as information in the answers. Flag difficult questions and come back to it later. You can use that review button to flag those for yourself to make sure you can come back and reconsider it later. And then don't leave any question unanswered. I don't believe you can. I believe you have to make a choice before moving on, but just make sure that you always do your best to choose the best answer and try not to just click something in order to move on. Really try to think as carefully as you can about each one, even if you're not sure. Do the best you can to make the most educated choice.
Okay, so and just to review in kind of a simpler, more visual fashion, some testing tips. So number one, read all your directions carefully. So I had a fun experience the other day when I was proctoring a scholar. He said, I loved question 19. I don't know what it was, but he said it actually had the answer in the question. So I absolutely loved that. So tip number one, read all your directions carefully. You might just find a clue to the answer in the directions. Number two is read the question carefully. So this goes right along with read your directions carefully. So understand what's being asked and what you need to do. And you may need to use different tools to answer the questions. So that's important. Sometimes it trips people up to see that there might be a drag and drop, or they might have to match, or instead of answering something, they might have to work with a graph. So there's different ways to answer the questions that are asked of your scholars. And it's important that they just start getting used to all of those different options that may be available to them. And again, always looking in the directions and the question to see maybe there's a clue to what the answer is going to be. Sometimes if it's a written answer too, restating part of the question can help with answering the question. So that's a little tip as well. So tip number 3 would be look for the keywords in the question, which is what we were just saying. So segue is perfect, that you look in the question to see if there's specific keywords that need to be addressed within the answer to the question. So what are the keywords? And you can even go through with your scholar and do that as a fun exercise. Okay, circle the things you think are the keywords, and then let's talk about this. Read all the answer choices. So tip number 4, read all your answer choices. Don't just choose the first or second answer that you think is the best answer. So Jen actually mentioned this earlier, that it's really important to look at all your answer options and then look back at the keywords that you possibly wrote down on a piece of scratch paper and see which one actually is best. So read them all, think it through, possibly even do process of elimination. If you're visual like I am, sometimes I need to write the questions out and then cross them out and okay, that one is not an option. That one's not an option. Then it leaves me with a couple, and then I look at the keywords that I circled or highlighted or however you do it and see which one makes the most sense. So especially if you're not really sure or you don't know that piece of material as well, that can be a really good strategy. So again, read all your answer choices. And then tip number 5.
All right. So tip number 5 is to eliminate the wrong answers. And if you have done well to read the question carefully and you have read through all the answers, then this will be much easier for you, because most often there's at least one, maybe even 2 choices that you can right off the bat say, that's not what this piece of reading was about, or that's definitely the wrong answer. You can't get that answer by multiplying whatever these fractions are, right? So there might be some right off the bat that you can just eliminate right out of the gate. So go ahead and do that. Once you've read the instructions and you've read all your options, just kind of mentally eliminate the ones that aren't even open for consideration. And then you can focus on the ones that are. Use the Mark for Review tool. So like we said earlier, that's available to you. If you think you're making the right choice, but maybe there's another one that could be right, but you just need to move on from thinking about that for the moment and maybe come back to it in a few questions or at the end of the test with sort of a fresh perspective. Go ahead and utilize that Mark for Review tool. And that way you don't have to go searching for that one question, one or two questions that you wanted to check on and make sure you had the right answer. If you go to your review questions, it'll be right there for you. So you won't have to search. It'll just take you right where you want to go. So use that tool. That's a universal tool that's available to everyone. Double check and review your answers. So it doesn't mean you have to do the test twice. It just means if there's some of those questions that you maybe wanted to think about more, it's okay to double check them. Once you've made the choice that you want to make, it's okay to kind of go through it again just to make sure that that really is the choice that you wanted to make. So this is where you would want to just sort of skim and decide if you're okay with the answers that you chose. If in doubt, just stick with your first answer. A lot of times when you do this double check and review process, if you spend too much time kind of dwelling on the choices that you made or the selections that you made, you may change something that shouldn't be changed. That's the right answer. So if you skim through and there's something that stands out, you definitely should change that one, then by all means, go ahead and do it. But this is mostly just to double check that you're satisfied with the answers you chose, not necessarily to change anything, but it is a good tool to use just in case something does stick out to you that's definitely wrong the second time you look at it and you want to make that change. This is a good time, a good way to do that. All right, stay positive and trust yourself. Kind of like the tip before to go back and review. Reviewing is good. Second guessing yourself, it can turn out to be a problem. So it's really important that you stay positive, trust yourself, know that you read the questions carefully, know that you read all the answer choices carefully, know that you made the selection that you feel is the best choice. And if you can do that and trust yourself that you have gone through that process, then you are doing really, really well. And it's okay to do that. You don't need to spend any time second guessing the choices that you made. If you feel like they're right, awesome. Okay. CASP is assessing you on your knowledge. So sometimes you might not have learned the material yet, and that's totally okay. So all you need to do is to do your best and move forward throughout the test. And you can absolutely do that. Okay. Nobody is expecting every scholar to get every single question right. You guys all have different levels of skills and knowledge and understanding. This test is not about passing or failing anything. This test is just about participating and showing where your skills are.
Okay, so we also wanted to make sure that you had some Compass resources that you could go to. For online scholars, you are going to have practice sessions with your teachers in the online classroom. So that's just awesome. That's going to be built into your regular instructions. For all scholars, we'll be sharing weekly resources. They'll be shared out via email from your teacher. So either your ST or your teacher, depending on what program you're in. And that's going to be provided so that learning coaches can practice with their scholars on their own schedule, which is great. So finally, all scholars and LCs will be offered weekly live interactive workshops. Those will be on Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. And Jen and I will actually be hosting those. LCs and scholars can attend and get prepared. So we'll also be having your scholars do some practice questions and walking you through how you can log your scholars into practice tests and just incrementally in short little periods of time, get them confident and prepared so they feel really settled with the format of the questions and the format of the test and the tools, etc. Finally, you're going to have some teacher-led practice in options as well as online. So make sure that you check with your supervising teacher or your online teacher to see if you don't see that posted or they haven't already made that clear. make sure you check in with them and just see how they're planning on going about doing that. So we're not going to go through each of these links. We've provided them on the slides for you in the chat box, but we made sure that you had a guide to understanding everything about the Smarter Balanced assessments, how the scores are used, etc. Also the CAS, which is again that science. Then the Starting Smarter website is actually an area where you can go in and do practice with your scholars. It's a different type of practice, but it's specifically made for parents to use with their scholars to help get them prepared. And then finally, we have everything in Spanish as well, and we wanted to make sure you have that. And just resources continued. This is a link directly to the CAS website for parents, so all the resources that you need. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that page, you'll find something called a technology checker, and that's going to test your device to make sure that you're ready for what you need in order to download the secure browser and have the bandwidth that you need to complete testing. And again, we referenced the Starting Smarter area for parents. And then finally, the practice and training test, which we will be reviewing with you in following sessions, but wanted to make available to you today as well, so you could check it out, possibly even do 5 or 10 minutes, and just start getting used to it with your scholar. And then lastly, we have all our wonderful subscriptions available. And since typing is part of the testing, we wanted to make sure that you had a subscription for typing practice available to you in your test prep. So finally, just to revisit that whole practice and training topic, we wanted you to be able to become familiar with the tools and the testing interface. So that interface is that bridge for you and the test. So when your scholars log in, there's a bridge that takes them into that test. That's the interface. So we have an assignment for you this week, and the reason for the assignment is so that Friday, February 11th, when we hold our next live testing session, or our first live testing session, you might be able to come with questions or any trouble that you happen to run into. So our assignment for you this week is that you would log into the practice site. You're going to click on practice test. So you're not going to do anything with the toggles. When you see it go, you'll click on the button for practice and training tests. It'll pull up something that has little toggle buttons. You're not going to do anything. You're just going to click on the login. You do not need any special login information to do this practice test. It'll actually just ask you to pick the grade and which subject, and you'll choose a practice test, either ELA or math, and just give it a shot. Anything that you run into that's trouble or confusing, write it down somewhere and come to our live session that Friday, February 11th, and ask us your questions, because we want to be there to help you troubleshoot. So very quickly, the difference between practice tests and training tests. Training tests are actually proctored by your teacher. So they're not official, and they're still meant to give your scholar practice, but they're proctored and they use the secure browser. So right now, the only thing we want you to try and get used to is the practice site. Oh, Jen, I actually forgot something. If you could go back to that other slide. So we also wanted to make sure that you were familiar with the Lumos Learning Practice Tests and Sample Questions site. That's for CASP as well. And it's 15-minute bites. So please go to the practice site on CASP. That's important because that gives them the actual look and feel and format. But just to practice test questions that are just like what's going to be on the CASP, you can go to the Lumos Learning Practice Test and Sample Questions site, which is linked here, and that'll give you 15-minute bite-sized practices that actually have feedback for you so that you can see how your scholar is doing.
Okay, so a little bit more in the mission planning. You will want to definitely mark your calendar for assigned testing days. Your supervising teacher is going to be scheduling these. So there's really there's not an option for much flexibility here because your supervising teacher needs to get everyone assessed in a pretty short window. So your ST is going to go ahead and just schedule the time. And we're going to ask that, although we do try to be very flexible with our families throughout the year with different things that we have going on, we are going to ask that you really prioritize whatever time your supervising teacher assigns you for this testing. Okay, it's very important, like we went over earlier, that we get it done and that we have as much participation as possible, but we are sort of limited on time. So we really need your help with prioritizing that time slot that your supervising teacher schedules for you. So make sure you have that Zoom room link. You may find, it kind of depends on your supervising teacher. A lot of us like to use Google Calendar. So we may set up an event in the calendar, and then we may send out that invitation to you via the Google Calendar. And that's really nice because it will remind you when that session is coming up, and it'll just help you kind of keep that time set aside. If your ST doesn't do that, that's okay. You will be getting the link and you'll be getting the scheduled time. All of that will be sent to you. If you would like to go ahead and create your own Google Calendar event with the link included and all that information, we definitely would encourage you to do that. If your supervising teacher doesn't set it up that way, totally okay. You should still probably use that feature because that makes it really convenient to keep that event front and center for you so that you remember when to show up. Now, some really important things that I think teachers have talked about these things since the beginning of time and testing really, and nothing has changed about some of these other tips. One's going to be get a good night's rest the day leading up to the test. Yeah. And the days, two nights ago, having a terrible night's sleep can really affect you, even 2 or 3 days in the future. So do your best the week of your test and the days leading up to your test to go to bed at a good time, wake up, get yourself plenty of sleep, be rested. In the days leading up, plan to go to bed and get up at the same time each day. That way you sort of make a schedule of sleeping and waking for yourself to make sure that you're as fresh as you can be for that assessment. Although it's not a pass-fail situation, we really want you to do your best and have the capacity to really to think carefully about these things and do your very best work. So it's still really important to get that good sleep, wake up in the morning, have a healthy breakfast. I know Fruit Loops are delicious, but try to stay away from those the morning of your test. Maybe some good protein, maybe some complex carbs, get yourself some oatmeal, something that will help your brain to really function at its optimal capacity. And then make sure that you have some snacks available. Yes, it's okay to pause your assessment and get up and walk away for a snack, but maybe you just have a few options to choose from right there next to you. Maybe you've got a banana or a granola bar or whatever you prefer for your snacks. Maybe you bring those to your computer with you so that you have that stuff available. If you feel like you want to nibble on something, you don't have to totally lose focus from your test and walk away. You can just grab something right there. But please do still feel welcome to take the breaks when you need them. That's really important as well. Okay. Make sure you're logged into the Zoom room on time. Your supervising teacher is going to have to read some instructions, get everybody started and logged into this testing system. So it's really important that you're on time to make sure that your supervising teacher can do that for everyone at the same time and not have to kind of bounce back and forth to get folks caught up if there's stragglers coming in a little bit late. Okay, so make sure you're the person that's on time. And also so you don't miss any of that important information, right? Wear comfy clothes. This is definitely not a beauty pageant situation. And we're not going to require you to do any physical exercise or anything like that. There's no specific wardrobe, but we want you to be really comfortable. So wear whatever makes you most comfortable, and just keep in mind that you're going to be on camera. You must be on camera for this. It's proctored. So be comfortable, but just keep that in mind that you'll be on the camera. Okay. And make sure, like Mrs. Lasley said, make sure that your environment is quiet, that you don't have parents, siblings that are trying to interact with you. Even pets can sometimes be quite a distraction. So make sure you're in a nice, quiet place where you have the ability to really, really focus. All right. And we love this quote, don't we? I've seen this pop up quite a bit lately. Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. I just really like that. That's really encouraging. That's a nice thought. Dream big. No matter how it ends up, it'll be good. All right. You want to go over the exit ticket?
So would you please put the exit ticket link in the chat box? And we would just request, because we want to make these sessions as personalized as possible, that you would complete this exit ticket and give us some feedback on what you hope to glean from our live sessions as we move forward throughout the month. We're really excited to be able to work with you live, and we're really excited to kick this off. And I thought it was funny that Ms. Hobson mentioned pets, and my dogs decided to bark just at the right time. So that was a perfect illustration. So we hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching.